In August of 1914, World War I began. And it was a war unlike previous wars for a number of reasons. For one thing, it was fought year-round. Most wars prior to this had been seasonal events that stopped when the winter got too bad, or took a summer vacation, if you will. Another thing about World War I is that it was fought primarily with volunteer soldiers or people that had been drafted, as opposed to the use of mercenary armies that previous wars had seen. World War I also had an unprecedented amount of death and destruction. You had 58,000 people dying in a single day. At the end of the war, there would be over 37 million people dead, 10 million of whom were civilians. One of the reasons for such astoundingly high death tolls were the horrible new machines of war that had been developed with all of the exciting new technology of the 20th century. There was something that seemed horribly wrong about all of this. Technology was supposed to save the world, not bring it to the brink of destruction. Technology was supposed to enrich people's lives, not end them prematurely in a hail of machine gun bullets. Art reflects the times, the zeitgeist, the way people feel about the world. And right now, people weren't feeling really good. There were a group of artists who called themselves the Dadas. And the Dadas were building an anti-art. Here's some excerpts from the Dada manifesto. Dada, abolition of memory. Dada, abolition of archaeology. Dada, abolition of prophets. Dada, abolition of the future. Dada, with the extreme satisfaction that it doesn't matter in the least. The Dadas wanted to destroy art. They felt that a world that could produce such a thing as World War I didn't deserve art, it didn't deserve beauty, and it certainly didn't deserve reason. So they built an art that was counter to all of these things. They would create artworks by scribbling random lines down and passing them around to each other. That would be one piece. Even their name had been chosen at random for its pure meaninglessness. Dada was nihilism embodied in art. Think about the way the world must have felt during and after World War I. The promise of the future had been smashed, and Dada was there to make sure everyone understood exactly what that meant. But art can't be nihilistic forever. And out of the Dadas would come some exciting new developments. There was a group of artists who couldn't continue to be nihilistic. There's only so far you can take it before you run out of things to smash and get rid of. But a lot of people liked the new techniques that the Dadas had brought. They liked the odd juxtapositions and the confusing and often contradictory messages it projected. These were the Surrealists, and they took to making canvases that looked like snapshots from dreams. Heavily influenced by the painter de Chirico, painters like Dali, Magritte, and Tanguy all built fantastic canvases with almost nonsensical titles that somehow seemed humorous and disturbing at the same time, and somehow resonated deeply with the culture. One artist who was loosely associated with the Futurists, the Dadas, and the Surrealists was a guy named Marcel Duchamp. Duchamp was born in 1887. And when he matured as an artist, after hanging out with the Futurists and absorbing some of their ideas about sound and motion, made a very famous painting known as Nude Descending a Staircase. Duchamp also had a number of other painting innovations. His time with the Dadas gave him exciting new thoughts about freedom and different ideas about the very nature of art. After all, if you're going to smash art, to pull down all the icons and reinvent it, it makes you think very deeply about what's fundamental about this thing we call art. In 1913, Duchamp makes his first ready-made. It's a stool with a bicycle wheel stuck in the top. Duchamp called this a sculpture. Well, let me tell you about a couple of his other important works, aside from this ready-made. In 1916, he goes to a shop and buys a postcard, a cheap reproduction of the Mona Lisa. It's about this big, the sort of thing you might find in any tourist shop in any town. And he takes this postcard, and on it, he draws a mustache on the Mona Lisa. And then at the bottom, where it has the name, he writes the letters L-H-O-O-Q. Is that really art? This is a very controversial work for a number of reasons. But before we talk about them, let me mention one of his other even more famous works. In 1917, Duchamp goes to a hardware store and he buys a urinal. And he takes that urinal and he signs R. Mutt, which is a play on words because there was a urinal company in France called R. Mott, and he puts it on a pedestal, clunk, and he says, "This is my new sculpture and it's called Fountain." Okay, what's going on here? Well, Duchamp is exploring one of the very fundamental notions of art, which is, how does art get created and what is it? And what Duchamp is really saying when he's looking at this bicycle wheel on a stool, or when we're looking at his urinal on a pedestal, is art has just as much to do with the process of calling it art as anything that the creator has to do with creating it. What do I mean exactly? How does something become art? Is there some sort of magic ray that shoots out of the painter's hand and transmits this information to a canvas, changing it from just oil on canvas to art? Or is it something that happens when you look at it? Where does the art part of the art come from? Or perhaps you can think of it this way. There's one piece of art that hardly gets talked about at all, but it's a part of almost every painting you see, and that's the frame that goes around it. Well, frames serve a very important purpose. And this is one of the things that Duchamp was realizing. And that's that frames tell you where the art stops and where the world starts. And part of what he's getting at with his fountain is this notion that if I take anything and I put it in the right kind of frame, you're going to think about it differently. You're going to think about it as art. Now you can argue, well, of course a urinal's not art. He just went and bought it, stuck it up there. But you're already talking about it. You're already thinking about it in a different way. And just seeing this common object stuck there like that, you can't help but start thinking about, well, what is art all about? What do I think is art? What isn't art? Is this it? Is this not it? And this is exactly the sort of stuff Duchamp wanted to explore.